Do you know the story of Paul, the Apostle Paul? He was born in the Greek town of Tarsus to a Roman father and a Jewish mother. He grew up learning about the Greek and Roman culture, but mostly he grew up as a Jew. To show his level of Jewishness, if that's a word, Paul boasts in the 3rd chapter of this letter, if anyone else has reason to be confident in the flesh, I have more. Circumcised on the 8th day, a member of the people of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew born of Hebrews, as to the law, a Pharisee, as to zeal, a persecutor of the church, as to righteousness under the law, blameless. Paul was one of the chief persecutors of this new church, the people of the way, the followers of Jesus. He arrested many so that they could be brought to trial and be put to death, until one day, on his way to the city of Damascus, far from Jerusalem, they had heard there was a new Christian gathering there, and he was on his way with others, and he was knocked off his horse with a flash of light, and he heard a voice, Saul, Saul. Saul was his Greek name. Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? And he said, who are you? And the voice said, I am Jesus, the Lord whom you persecute. And in a very mysterious way, Paul was struck blind and then met Jesus face to face after his resurrection and learned all that he needed to become one of the greatest of the evangelists. From then on, Paul was the apostle to the Gentiles, to the outcast and to the stranger. From then on, he went from city to city, starting new churches. He would travel to these different cities and villages in the Greco-Roman world, starting new churches. And he would build people up so that there was a fine group of people. Then he would find the leaders in the group and build them up even more so that they could survive when he moved on to the next city or village to start another gathering of Christians. It is clear from this letter and from other letters that Paul wrote that he had a sweet spot, a place in his heart for these people of Philippi. This was the first city that Paul and his followers went to in what is today known as Europe. They had had quite good success in Asia Minor, some setbacks here and there, but overall good success in Asia Minor, and now they moved on to Europe in the city of Philippi. So as you can imagine, traveling through the world ruled by Rome, preaching a message that Caesar was not king, but rather this Jesus is the true ruler of the world, that did not endure him and his parties to the local politicians. He often found himself in prison, awaiting trial for one reason or another. It is from prison that Paul writes his letter to the Philippians, probably from Rome, where he will be put to death. Paul wrote many letters, several of them from different prisons, to the churches that he started. Corinthians, Ephesians, Thessalonians, all of those different letters. And this may well have been the last one that he wrote. We will probably never know for sure the order in which his letters were written. There just isn't enough information in those letters to put them in an exact order. Paul lived. He lived in a time when the Roman emperor really was the king of the world. If he said you should die, you died. If he said you should live, you lived. If he said whole nations should be wiped out, they died. No one dared to question the emperor and lived to tell their grandchildren about it. But, as I have said, these Christians came with a new and different message. The message that Jesus is king. In fact, Jesus is God, the one and only God. And because of this message, death for all of them was a very real possibility that lay around every corner. In the introduction to this letter to the Philippians, Paul commends the people of Philippi for remaining faithful and for their continued support of his worldwide ministry. He exhorts them to remain faithful, as he says, so that in the day of Christ you may be pure and blameless. Paul probably has more interaction with wealthy and powerful people than Jesus did, but he did spend most of his time, like Jesus, with the poor, the hungry, and the outcast. He brought this message of Jesus' hope to those people who needed it most. Because he carried such a message, he lived a life where imminent death was a very real possibility. In the part of the letter that we read today, he tells the people of Philippi that he is now on that razor's edge between death and life. And in the letter, he is openly wondering which is better, life or death. He comes right out and says that death would be better for himself. The alternative is that he stays and does as God asks him to do. To stay there a little longer, to inspire and encourage the people like those he's writing to in Philippi and to all the other churches he has established and to maybe those that he will continue to establish. He calls on them and us. And he says, only live your life in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. What does that mean for us? Next week, we will have the next part of this letter to the Philippians. You will hear Pastor David read, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility regard others as better than yourselves. In other words, Paul believes wholeheartedly, just like Jesus did when he was asked, what's the greatest commandment? Paul lives by this greatest commandment. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your strength and all your soul. And secondly, love your neighbor as yourself. There is real compassion in this church that we call Lutheran Church of the Master. The passion to feed those in our neighborhood and in the world that don't have enough. We currently have 3 ways that we do this. We continue to have our food shelves program where Darla gives out most of the bags and I give out a few on a daily basis. Mostly these bags are given to those who are on the streets or under the streets as we have learned in the last week or so, or out in the desert. Please bring some non-perishable foods by the office so that we can continue to have enough to feed this vital part of our community. Then we have our annual Crop Hunger Walk coming up on October 10th. This program is both global and local. If you want to sponsor Dr. Pat Williams or Maddie and Mona, our two dogs, go to the website that's right here on your screen. And you can find under Donate, you can find LCN or past Dr. Pat Williams. One of our Living the Resurrection focus statements that we worked together as a congregation to develop says, as servants of God, we, with the help of Jesus' unconditional love, give support and love to our diverse community. And we do that. The third hunger program, I'm so excited about this new drive-through food event that just keeps getting better, even though we're still in the planning phases of it. We will be partnering with City Serve Network and their Farmers to Family program with First Assembly Church here in Lancaster. And we'll be partnering with the LA County Food Bank through Grace Resources here in Lancaster. The need is so great in this part of Lancaster. We could be giving out 50 pounds of food to 100 or more families in just a matter of months. We're going to do this once a month on the third Saturday of every month. So if you want to join in, that's when to mark off your calendars, the third Saturday morning of every month to help out. This past week, Linda Adams picked up 20 of the boxes of fresh food that we will be giving away, thinking that she would share them with her neighbors, even though her neighbors probably didn't need them. When she told the church council about her giving away the boxes, the stories that she told us brought tears to her eyes, and to be honest, to mine as well. She stayed right there in her very neighborhood, on her very cul-de-sac, and gave away those 20 boxes of food, and she was amazed. Amazed at what people told her about what those boxes meant to them, and to their children, and to their families. She found that there is a very deep and hidden need in this community right around our church. People told her that because of this box of food, they can put salad on the supper meal this week. She was told that because of these boxes of food, some children were going to have lunch this week with fruit in it. She heard about this hidden need that is so great. She finished her report by saying, "This is how we do church." This new program will cost us some one-time upfront costs and a lot of sweat equity. But other than that, there are no costs to anyone who receives the food and no costs to those who give the food out. If we become known as the church on the east side that feeds the hungry, I think that will be a great thing. When Paul wrote to the Philippians about whether it is better for him to live or to die, he said that living was all about this, living a life worthy of the gospel of Christ. Because of your association with the mission and ministry of Lutheran Church of the Master, you are already a part of these programs. It is my prayer that you will find ways to be even more involved through prayer, through physically helping, or through financial donations. Even in this time of pandemic, of social distancing and closures, we can be that church, the one that feeds the hungry, both those that are seen on the streets every day and those who are hiding their needs out of shame. Amen.